we are headed for a number 1 versus number 2 matchup in Coleman Coliseum next Saturday. The question is, who's going to be 1 and who's going to be 2?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama, AHSA Radio Network's Luke Robinson. That's me. Bama Online's Jimmy Stein. That's him. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and we'll talk about FanDuel in just a little bit. Thank you, everydayers, for being every day, and thank you, newbies, for being here today, and thank you for making us your first listen today. Listen, Jimmy, huge, monster, unbelievable win last night for Alabama. It's Arkansas. They have 8 losses going into the game. I know, but we told you they're good. And so just deal with it. It's a big win. Yeah, I know. We were up 18 points, and they cut it to blood. Okay. But we overcame it, and we won. Be thrilled. And the other thing that I want to talk about is Chris Youngblood, Mo Diabate. I got some interesting things to say about them, but Jimmy, I want you to talk about the game here just for a second while I make one quick change. I'm going to give you the floor.
Yeah, I agree with you that there's far too much, what I would say negativity about, after that game. That was a fantastic win. I think in some ways it was one of Alabama's best wins. And by that, I'm not saying that Arkansas was the best team Alabama's beaten on the road. Of course they're not. But Arkansas was hot. That was an extremely difficult environment to play in. Things went really well. There were stretches of the game where Alabama was playing its best basketball the whole year. And then there were stretches when Alabama didn't play well at all, which is what 100% of you should have expected going into this game, because they are a good team, exceptionally well coached, great athletes in a very tough environment. It's crazy to me, but I don't know why I'm ever surprised about the, amount of negativity that's out there. This is the best Alabama regular season of my lifetime. This is the best Alabama team I've ever seen. It simply doesn't get better than this. Alabama is probably going to be the number 1 team on Monday, despite playing the toughest schedule. In other words, what Alabama's doing is borderline impossible. And some people, of course, bitch their way through the whole thing.
It's so true. And kudos to Jimmy for kicking off the Auburn Nation early this morning by saying Alabama had the number 1 schedule, because I promise you they're saying they have the number 1 schedule. And it's very close. And I think it's come see, come saw. I mean, it's like 6 and 1, half dozen another, doesn't matter. But and it is pretty cool. Set aside the fact that you can't stand Auburn, I can't stand Auburn, all those things. And that's what makes the rivalry beautiful. Nobody get upset by that. It is pretty cool that the 1 and 2 teams are in this state, and that's going to be kind of fun. It really is. And it was also fun watching Auburn lose yesterday. I'm not going to lie about that either. But right now, this moment for Locked On Bama is Locked On Bama. And yesterday, I want to go to something I heard this morning. I'm driving I got a memorial service for another family member. Boy, it's been a rough month for Daddy over here. So I'm driving from Birmingham to Lake City. And so I got to listen to the Field of 68 and Jeff Goodman's podcast. And one thing they brought up, they talked about Chris Youngblood. And they said, look, one of the hosts actually said, if I were ranking, I would still put Auburn 1, Duke 2, and Bama 3. I think that's nuts. Number 1, I have no problem saying this. I'm being completely unbiased. I would go Auburn 1, Bama 2, Duke 3. That's me. Now, the reason I say that is because Auburn does have 1 fewer loss than we do. The schedules are uber comparable. I mean, very comparable. And yeah, Auburn lost at home by 9, but we lost at home by 10 to Ole Miss not too terribly long ago. I just think I would still have Auburn 1. And here's the other thing. I'd rather Auburn be 1 coming into Tuscaloosa. And finally, if we want to be 1, just beat them in Tuscaloosa and you'll get it. Even I'd go this far. If Alabama loses to Texas and then beats Auburn in Tuscaloosa, they may still go to 1. But now what I wanted to say was more about Chris Youngblood, because they were talking about how, this Alabama team has really come on lately. And it's been a lot of Chris Youngblood. And here's the thing, the way Chris Youngblood has adapted. Last year, he took 65 mid-range jump shots. Now, that was over the course of an entire year. I understand they're a little bit skewed. But this year, in the number of games he's played for Bama, how many do you think he's taken?
2.
Did you listen to the same dang thing I did?
No.
Did you know this?
No, I was guessing based on watching the games.
You guessed 2?
I guessed 2.
Out of an infinite number of possibilities, you guessed the right number?
Well, Nate doesn't want these kids taking mid-range jumpers, so we just generally don't. I think there's games where we don't take any.
Yeah. Well, and then you talk about Cliff Amore. Cliff last year got fed with his back to the basket several times. And this year, not. Now, they didn't have a specific stat on that. That's just the way it is. And the point was how well this team has adapted and how, people love to point at the Ole Miss game or point to the Purdue game or point to the Oregon game, the games Alabama lost, and say, yeah, this team is flawed. They are. But it's taken some time for Chris Youngblood to get acclimated. Cliff Amore is playing a completely different style, and he's getting better. And on top of that, while all that's going on, we're without Darion Reed. And on top of that, LeBaron Filene's still sort of working out the freshman fog, I will say. I believe this. Somebody DM'd me last night that listens to the podcast. I actually had a few people DM me last night, like more than one, and say things, that sort of like be on Mark Sears' boo honkus, that he's just not, hey, Mark Sears is always going to turn it over late in the game. I can't deny it. I can't deny that happens because it's factual. It's happened. But I also say this, hey, believe. This guy's Mark maybe even had a freshman funk. I mean, not freshman, a senior funk. A senior, what would be something, what's a synonym for funk that starts with S?
There's a T at the end of the word.
Oh. And high in the middle. Okay. So anyway, but I really think he's going to come on, man. And when he turns it on, guess what? It's going to be the perfect time because it's going to be March. So let's just enjoy the fact that we are one of the 3 best teams in the country and that we do have some flaws, but things are getting better. We are the one team of the 3 right now that I think is getting better. I think Auburn I don't know that they've come back so much as other people have caught up, but they've come back a little. And then Duke, while I think Duke may be the most talented team, they clearly have some flaws. So I don't know. There's a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, I'm not really going to complain about Mark. I mean, I see what all the rest of y'all see, and I'm not excusing a bad play. I'm sure they're talking to him about this, and I'm sure they're working on this because all of these players are a work in progress. None of them are completed, done. It's not like you work with a college player and say, okay, we're done making you better. It's over. You are what you are, and we're not going to work with you anymore. I mean, they're working with him on the ball security and the turnovers because it's been pretty bad in the past 2 or 3 games. But complaining about Mark, I mean, I hate using this analogy over and over again, but it's a little bit complaining about the mole on Cindy Crawford's face. I mean, if you're that upset with Mark, there's 330 teams that want to take him off our hands. As a matter of fact, there's probably about 15 or 16 teams I can name that would pay Alabama $1 million to have Mark Sears. He's the best player on the best team. And I think complaining about him, I mean, all it means is Mark is a great player, but he's far from perfect. That's probably why even when he enters the NBA draft next June, he's not going to be a first-round pick. This is part of that reason that he's not going to be a first-round pick. He's not a perfect player. He's not the most awesome player of all time. But what he is the best player on the best team, in my opinion. And complaining about him, we might as well complain about the weather in San Diego when it dips all the way down to 66 or it sprinkles for 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, again, I've it was kind of funny. I had an Auburn fan at my house last night for a little bit. That's a friend. And after the game, I mean, you know how like either Alabama fans do this too, but if you're an Auburn fan or an Alabama fan, you're at the other fan's house. Like after when the game gets close towards the end, you're like, oh, y'all are going to win it. And then that way, if you don't win, they're like, oh man, that's tough luck. And then you go, but
right.
but if you win it, you're like, I told you were going to win. Well, he starts going like, yay, Alabama, and, sort of in a condescending, but could easily say, I'm not being condescending way. And he was like, you guys just don't celebrate wins. I was like, we're different than y'all. Like after a game, like, yeah, I have fun sometimes, but like this game was a blowout, then it was close. And now I'm sitting there thinking about, okay, what all do I have to think about? Because there's a lot to absorb. I was like, Auburn fans just go out and roll everything when they win. They don't care. There's a positive to that. There is a negative to that. But the positive for me is because I do a podcast, I like to be, thinking about, okay, what do we need to discuss here? That also isn't just, oh my God, we gave up a big lead. I want to talk about something positive. But Jimmy, we got to go to break, and then we're going to keep talking about basketball. You know why? It's a big deal right now, whether you like it or not. FanDuel. You want to use FanDuel today for Super Bowl, but when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get 150 smacks in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at 150 smacks and bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. How about that? So let's have a shorter segment on just the state of the SEC and all this stuff right now.
Well, too. I just want to say one more thing about the game. I forgot to say.
Sure.
I think it's important. I really think in so many respects last night was a perfect game for Alabama. And this is why. First of all, you won in a place that not many teams in the SEC would have won last night. Very few teams in the SEC would have won that game at Arkansas last night, the way they played and the way they're playing. So that's the biggest part of why it was a perfect game. The second biggest part of why it was a perfect game was because Alabama played stretches of the game where they looked like the best team in the country, which is exactly what you want, of course, this time of year. And thirdly, that blown lead allowed Alabama to win the game in the final minute or two, making plays on offense and defense with the game on the line in a crazy environment. That's exactly what they need to get ready for March. There's going to be games in that NCAA tournament where they need to do things like that. Make a play at the end to win the game in a raucous environment. And the more it happens during the regular season, the more you're ready for it in the postseason. So I thought in that sense, that was a perfect game for Alabama because they got one more experience of being in a tight game down the stretch because that's what they're going to need in about a month.
One other thing I know some people are going to complain about. That late game free throws, no matter who's at the line, it seems like we haven't been making them. True, fair. I give it to you. I don't have a retort because it's right. Chris Youngblood, who's 81% on the year, missed 2 in a row. And they both could have been painful. But I think it also should be told that, see, the mark of a good team, when Chris Youngblood missed that second one, guess what happened? Mo Diabate made a play to let that gangly 8', 12'9" player they have bounce it off his chest and go out of bounds. Because you know why? Mo Diabate does those things. And I had another Alabama friend watching the game with me, and I said, Mo got some fouls early. He was getting frustrated because they called some balls out of bounds on him. He thought we're off on the other team. You could see the frustration on his face. And I told my friend, I said, Mo Diabate is going to rack up in the second half. You know why? Because he didn't have two bad halves in a row, ever. I hadn't seen it happen. And I don't care if he plays 8 minutes or 82 minutes. It just doesn't happen. And so that's the mark of a good team, where somebody falls down and another person picks them up.
No, that's exactly right. And that's why this Alabama team, they said it last night on the broadcast about how a lot of teams have depth, but they don't have depth like Alabama, because Alabama's 8th, 9th, and 10th guys can come off the bench and win the game. They're guys capable of carrying the team when they need to be carried. And Alabama's got 10, and everybody else is lucky to have 3 or 4. But Alabama's got 10. And it's the deepest team ever. Now, Alabama may one day, under Nate, have 13 guys that play significant roles. That's not hard to imagine under Nate, but that won't be deeper than this team, because this team's depth is guys that come off the bench and can carry the team.
All right, so let's talk about the SEC as a whole here, because things are coming into light. And first of all, Auburn's losing. What it does, I think the Auburn loss is big for a couple of reasons, in the sense that, look, I have no problem saying this. It looked like just something you couldn't do going into Auburn and winning. It just looked like something that couldn't be done. It was like trying to win in Bryant-Denny under Nick Saban. It was like trying to win in the Orange Bowl under Miami a while back. It just looked like that. Even if it wasn't necessarily true, it felt that way. You hear about all the camping out and all the ticket prices and all the whatever. And then what you realize is, yeah, this Auburn team is very good. Don't get me wrong. They're not historic. They're good. They're really good. They might be the best team in the country this year, but they're beatable. This isn't UNLV of the early 90s. This isn't Duke of the early 90s. This is a very good team for this era. And what that means is a lot of teams can still beat you. And Florida, it took a Florida team, missing their second best player, mind you, to go in there and punch him in the mouth. Well, actually, Florida took a gut punch early and then came back swinging, and they just never let up. And the one thing that scares me about that game, and this, again, a credit to the field of 68, they said, you know what? They were at the game, and they said the reason Florida was able to withstand this, they never gave the crowd reason to get up. They didn't have a lot of live ball turnovers where, you get a turnover and then you get a alley-oop dunk that fires the crowd up. Florida didn't do that. Alabama's susceptible to those things happening. So that's one thing we're going to have to clean up. Now, the other thing going out, Texas A&M gets a big win. By the way, thank you, Texas A&M. That helps us out. Creighton gets a win over Marquette. That helps us out. I know it's not SEC. Ole Miss, they tap in at the buzzer against LSU. That helps us a little bit, if you ask me. What else happened yesterday, Jimmy? Kentucky, blew out South Kakalaki. Tennessee goes to Oklahoma. My God, Oklahoma may not make the tournament.
Tennessee is an anaconda on defense. They strangle you. I mean, that's the kind of game and team that will worry me for Alabama down the stretch, is a team that plays defense like that. Now, thankfully, off the top of my head, I can only name 2, Tennessee and Houston. And Alabama obviously can beat Houston, obviously. I'm not saying that those are teams Alabama can't beat. Of course, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that style of play is going to make me nervous heading to the NCAA tournament when you run against a team like that. Tennessee just gave Oklahoma no chance at all to win in their own gym.
Yeah, they here's, to quote Sir Mix-a-Lot, here's hoping that in a few weeks that anaconda don't want none of Alabama.
Oof. Oof.
That was a reach.
Oof.
A reach. I have no problem saying that. All right. When we come back, a few football notes. All right. So there's still football stuff going on, as per usual, as per always. First and foremost, Jimmy, this is both a historic and sad day in Alabama history. Not anything to do with the Super Bowl. It's Ryan Williams' birthday. Yeah. He is no longer 17 years old. I do have a picture of Ryan Williams today on his birthday Yes, old age is already setting in right there. As you can see clearly, he's got the Gandalf the gray beard, and yeah, I did that on my own, y'all. Just that was nobody else but me. I did that with.
Has everybody heard of artificial intelligence, AI? That was AS, artificially stupid.
I don't look at it.
That's artificially stupid.
Jimmy, that took me dang near 7 minutes. That is fantastic. Even the dreadlocks are white. I mean,
I appreciate the creativity. There's some creativity there. It is funny though. Now we don't. Now it's not like Ryan's a young player having success in college football. He'll be 18. It's not easy to be a dominant college football player at 18, and yet now it feels like we can't bring up his age anymore. I probably will, because it's absurd how good that kid is, and boy, it's a big part of optimism for next fall, because that kid really is something else. I think. Well, I know he's going to be even better next fall, because there's things I'm sure, because that kid, the first thing is he goes to Coach Shepard. What do I need to do to be a better player next fall? And Shepard's going to give him a list. It's not like the fans. I mean, Shepard's got a list of, this is what I need you to do better. Probably starts with picking up some blocks outside. But really, I think it gets to working on his hands. There were too many drops. And just getting bigger, stronger. Not bigger, strong. He's never going to be anything but Devontae Smith in terms of how he's built. He's going to be Devontae. But you know what? Devontae was a hell of a blocker. Particularly late in his career, Devontae developed into more of a physical presence despite his size. And that's one of the things I think Ryan can improve on. But boy, what a talent. And yeah, I'm going to mention his age a few times, because it would be remarkable for any 18-year-old to dominate SEC football.
You don't have to be a pancaker to be a good blocker.
Correct.
The goal is to get in the way so that the guy can't make the tackle. I don't care if the guy ends up on his tuchus. Just get in his way. Don't
be and don't draw a penalty. Don't draw a penalty and make an effective block. That's the difference between some offensive linemen that are clearly great and dominant and others that are good and we don't realize they're good, because not every block up front on the offensive line has to be a pancake for it to be great. Do your job. Make sure that the guy you're assigned to block does not get involved in the play. And you've done your job no different than the guy who registered the pancake.
Really, it's sort of like the way Nate Oates coaches basketball in a sense. It's great if you hit an 18-foot jumper. Those can be pretty, but they count the same as getting the ball deep inside, and it's much higher percentage to get it inside. And so it's like, a pancake block is pretty, but it's risky. It's much riskier, and the payoff isn't any better. We all loved when, I think it was Andre Smith as a freshman, and it may have been against Arkansas. He laid somebody out, and that was fantastic. But if you lay somebody out and then you get called for targeting, you not only did you get hurt the play, you're out of the game. So I'm saying, just get in the way. And I think Ryan Williams would be smart enough to do this, going back to all this. I don't know why we got off on a whole blocking tangent. The other football note that I find interesting is Alabama has announced its homecoming game, and it's Oklahoma. Now, I'm down with it. Okay. Because I think Auburn's homecoming game is early in the year, and I don't want a homecoming early in the year. I do also have a homecoming question for everybody here in a minute. But I think also this homecoming is kind of late in the year, right? Maybe a little too late for me. I don't know. I like homecoming right in the middle if it can be possible. I'm also going to say this about homecoming that I want you to answer for me. All my life, and this may sound stupid, I always assumed homecoming was also tied into when the team had been on the road and then they come back.
Yeah.
That's what I always assumed.
Yeah.
But then somebody told me the other day, you might be the stupidest person on the planet. Homecoming's about when the fans come back to university. I'm like, I thought it was kind of both. And that's why I always thought it was weird when there was homecoming after you had played a home game the week before. I always thought homecoming was like everybody's coming back. The team, the coaches, the fans, everybody. And then he told me, no, it's all about the fans. Which one is it to you, Jimmy? And am I stupid?
No,
or are those mutually exclusive?
I don't think you're stupid at all, because I think if you look back at Alabama, the vast majority, it's probably not 100%, but the vast majority of the time Alabama celebrated homecoming has been the week after an Alabama road game. I mean, that's more than a pattern. I bet if we look back, we're talking about, I'm going to say 80% of the time. It's probably more like 90% of the time. And so I don't think it's dumb at all, because that makes sense. But I'd realize homecoming is about the alums coming home to celebrate a weekend of, hey, I graduated from here, I went to school here, and it's a celebration of the alumni coming home. That's true too, and I get it. My thing, though, is that's kind of crazy to me, and I guess it's because I'm so football centric, even though, me and you both went to Alabama, so we're part of that alum crowd. Who only goes to homecoming? What football? I mean, the seats are sold for every game.
Yeah,
homecoming makes it sound like, man, every seat will be taken this weekend. It's homecoming. No,
it's antiquated.
I mean, are there any more? Who comes to campus that weekend that's not going to the game, that isn't there every week? I mean, obviously there are things that go on academically that I'm unaware of, just like I was unaware of academics when I was actually in school. But I just mean, it just seemed like, isn't this, I'm sitting around the same people at homecoming I sit with every game.
It's nobody new.
It's nobody new. Yeah.
It's just a bunch of pomp and circumstance for real. And homecoming is a little antiquated. And the idea that your homecoming opponent is a weaker opponent, also an antiquated thing, because now, I mean, it used to be you would have somebody probably easy in the middle of the season, and that would be your homecoming, because you do want to beat your homecoming opponent, because, it sounds bad, but it's different now. And, if Oklahoma wants to use, hey, Alabama's using us for their homecoming opponent as, fire you up locker room material, so be it. But I mean, if I'm Alabama, I'm like, okay, well, who would y'all have chosen? Because we're sort of out of options.
Yeah, this one final point. There's 3-year-olds in that stadium, literally like 3 or 4 years old, that can sing "Yay Alabama." They know every word, and of course, every adult in the place does. They play "Yay Alabama," and everybody sings along, and it's written "Crimson Flame" and "Teach the Bulldogs to Behave." Everybody knows every word of that song in that stadium. But one time a year, they do the alma mater. Everybody stands up and they play the alma mater.
Ooh,
no one knows that.
No chance.
No one. I think maybe if you used to be in the band, you might know the words. No one knows those words, and no one goes, "Gosh, I've got to learn the words to this." I'm
also going to tell a dirty little secret on myself, and I hope there's somebody out there who feels where I'm coming from. There is nothing I hate more as a man who's horrible with directions than when somebody tells me I'm sitting on the east side of the stadium. I have no idea what you're talking about. Daniel Tosh had a whole bit about, like, if there were ever a zombie apocalypse, everybody's like, go north. He's like, I'm screwed. I don't know. What am I going to do? He's like, I can't just go up. That's north to me. And I don't know directions. So don't tell me I'm on the east side of the stadium. What you need to tell me is the exact gate number. And even then, as many times I've been to Tuscaloosa, I went to school there for 4.5 years. I've gone to games multiple times. And if you told me, hey, I'm at gate 16, I'm like, okay, all right, pretend I'm on University Boulevard, then what do I do?
Exactly.
So that's how I don't know. Well, I'm trying so hard to remember either great moments or disappointments. I remember vividly where I was watching.
If I put you in the middle of the sea, if I put you in the middle of the sea, and if I put you in the middle of the sea and said America is to your west,
I'm going to just start swimming underwater. Down.
Yeah, I would be a lot. I mean, I don't know. You got to be a mariner, literal mariner, to be able to look at the sky and know which way is north, south, east, and west. I'm
Again,
not that person.
We're on a tangent, but that's why when we don't give old sailors enough credit. You don't know how hard there's waves, there's mutinies, there's scurvy, there's no food, there's rats with bubonic plague, and you think you have a good compass. And you're like, yeah, go that away. I mean, I can't get to Bryant-Denny Stadium to the gate without assistance. And these guys were finding new continents.
Why would you trust a compass that was built in like 1240? Like, this is the latest technology.
I'm basically incontinent. All right, that's going to do it. All right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.